You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? Now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. Why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen? What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? Man, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause, now that I can see the cause so clearly. I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me. I will pick my targets and assassinate them lyrically. I will bring a mountain to the town square, hook them to the pillory and leave them there. Hillary, I'll see you there. Hillary, I'll see you there. You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? Now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. Why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen? Welcome to the fantasy of rhetoric. Welcome to the last of the free speech while we can get it. And I promise you can get it. All you corporate Democrats, second wave Confederates, GOP illusionists, and neo-Nazi bureaucrats. And Stephen fucking Miller, I will see you in the aftermath. When all the laws are dust, there's just moral justice after that. And I will hunt you through the wasteland if it comes to that. So I can rub you in the dirt like a cheap human Brillo pad. I can sleep fine when our beds are burning, Stephen, but I'll turn around and run into the blaze to get my pillow back. As long as I can lay my head down, I can live with that. I can deal with a little ash. I can feel like a little of the old me burn with the bed and the rest of my past. The old world where we all lived and we can't get back. The old world where you didn't give and you'd still get back. Where you could rake in 12 billion and give none back. Those days are behind us, the virus will kill all that. Your wealth is behind us and kindness is meant for the past. Our leaders would bind us and starve us and call it a fast. A sacrament meant for their God that they garnish in cash. And they feed it the poor by the hundreds, that's all that it asks. Its hunger is legion and people in need are all it will have. So our only chance is to starve it and hope that it turns on them. You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your hands. Can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your hands. Maybe that's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive, kept our enemies close. Wondered why we don't thrive while we're grasping at ghosts, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5.
Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contracts tossed and they're gone with the tide. And the heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this track and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip. Till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes. Because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards.
False alarm.
Chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously,
No.
we're fucked. We are
Right.
fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Ian?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News. Good morning, Julia.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Twidget, why are you like this all the time? Anyway, what's up, everybody? It's Reef. You know what it is. It's IND News. I'm here with Collin, as always. Collin, how are you? You doing okay?
Besides the allergies, yes, I'm good.
Oh, yeah, it's pollen season in DC, right?
Tis the season. Yeah, tis the season. Ice is sensitive. The flowers.
You gotta take photos of all the pretty cherry trees. It's pretty. It's pretty.
Well, I probably will this weekend anyway because they're at peak now. So, but at least by the tidal basin. But yes, yeah, me Sikipu. Also, my house is probably not helping either, so it means I have to do a major cleaning of the house within the next few weeks. Yeah. So, which is probably adding to it. So, but I'm good otherwise for the most part, and we're back after a week off. But you had tech issues.
Yeah,
well,
a router. How does a router just die? How does it just unplugged, replugged, and it was just like, nope.
How old was it?
I don't work anymore. Not even that long. I think like a year, maybe. So I don't know. It was whatever.
At what service? And you have a Comcast, right?
Yeah. So
I mean, it shouldn't. But in a way, I'm not surprised. So it's Comcast.
It's fucking. Don't even get me started. Tell me if that sounds better, Sean. Could do. We brought stories.
Yeah. So these stories, well, at least mine were kind of ones I would have done last week anyway, but they still kind of hold now, especially with more information regarding the first story, and we're seeing a lot more of this happen. We'll be seeing a lot more of this happening, I'm sure. So 2 weeks ago, you guys know we talked about Mahmoud Khalil, who, as you guys know, he was detained by ICE in a matter of our government basically saying that he was siding with Hamas, when more likely it's more because he was protesting against Israel, which now is a no-no.
Yep.
He's currently being held in Louisiana right now. But I think the biggest thing that people were talking about and still online is the fact that he's a green card holder, that he doesn't have rights, is the same type of rights as would a naturalized / natural born citizen would. So the argument is being made that he has the right to have his green card status removed, and he doesn't have the same rights as in First Amendment rights because he's a green card holder. Well, we're going to go into that tonight because I'm sure some of our audience are probably green card holders. I myself was one up until 10 years ago when I became a naturalized citizen. So this might be something you might want to share with your friends if they are green card holders, especially given our current political environment. So just as a way for all of us to protect ourselves. And then later on tonight, we're going to talk about USAID. As you know, Trump has cut funding to the organization. So obviously there was a lot of concern regarding, support. Well, I think support in the States, but not necessarily internationally.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to hear from a couple of people who argue that not receiving funding from USAID actually might be helpful for Africa.
Very good. In that sense.
So we are gonna look at, because we are nuanced here on this show, or we try to be. We are gonna look at both sides.
And I'm gonna tell you that funding went straight back into the State Department to do it covertly, as what it used to do overtly. Which what it used to do before it was overt, it was covert. Now it's back. Same, different thing.
Right. But I think there is some stuff that people should know about what USAID funding is used for, especially internationally, that it will affect, international citizens, depending, especially in Africa. So it is good that people do know about that, but also given the context of what people in Africa are saying regarding the aid. So we'll go into that later. And then what did you bring?
Well, I brought Piece by Alan Macleod on Betar from the planet Betar. We're going to talk about, I wish it were nice and fun and, whimsical as the planet Betar, but no, it's just a right-wing terrorist group that Israel runs. So we're going to get into that, a bit of its history. Shout out Indy for covering a Gen-X thread about it previously. So you're welcome to go check that out as well. But we're going to, go from a different angle on that. So we're going to be thorough around here. We tend to be. But I also brought an unfortunate story about Gaza returning to mourning, seeing as how Israel has started bombing them again. These are the 3 journalists that we know that have passed recently. And were brutally murdered. We're going to get into it. I will try not to cry during that segment. No promises. But we're going to get through it together, So, but it's definitely important to remember them at least. So we're going to get into that. But that's what I brought. So, completely uplifting and not depressing news from around the world. But yeah, you ready to get started?
Yeah, but before we do that, shout out to all of our fam who are here. I'm sure most of you are old hats, but for those who are new, welcome. We're so happy that you're here. We just want to share with all of you and remind most of you that our channel is demonetized because we do not talk about stories that are favored by the algorithm. In fact, the algorithm hates us and suppresses us deep down in the bowels of YouTube. So I'm sure for a lot of you, it's hard even to try and find our network on YouTube, even if you type it in. So obviously, we need money to kind of keep the lights on, but more especially to pay for the programming that we use in order to, make this channel / show happen. Because a lot of them are yearly or monthly fees that we have to pay out of pocket. So to help us subsidize some of that cost, if you guys want to support us financially, you can go to our Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen there, or if you have a smartphone, you can scan your QR code that you see on your screen, and it will lead you to our Ko-fi account, where you can give any amount that you desire. Anything as low as $1 will help us out immensely. Or you can give as much as you want. We will also appreciate it. We also say every week, we know that times are rough in these streets for everybody. So please make sure you take care of yourselves, your neighbors, your families, your cities, your towns, and whatever they need first. Oh, as my phone falls on the floor.
Throw it on the ground.
But if you do have some extra money, we will definitely appreciate any extra bucks you're able to throw us away. And if you do, you become a part of our INN Supporters Wall of Fame that you see here. Hopefully, once we're more regular, we might be able to do something more specific to our super fans who give a lot. We definitely want to try and work out some extra perks for you guys. So, actually let us know in the chat what you want from us if you're able to give more and regularly. So what perks would you like us to try and work out for you guys as a thank you for supporting us financially. So but also to be transparent, any extra money we get will help support getting tech for our friends in that channel, so they're able to
pay off the software that gouges us every year, month. You know,
yeah, it's
So,
only going up like everything else.
you
So
know, plus I got to pay the electric bill for 5 monitors, so that's already enough. You know, it's like you don't even know what's going on here, dude. I'm running the spaceship, dog. I'm trying to land this shit. It's tough. It's tough out here. All right. All right. You ready to do this?
yes.
Leroy?
All right. So this is more an update, but this story I believe is important for especially those of you who might be green card holders to kind of have an understanding what your rights are in terms of how essentially you're a pseudo citizen of the US, and especially given our environment, you know, how you can protect yourself in terms of the status that you have. I will argue too, this might also be good especially for people who are naturalized or have birthright citizenship, sorry, as well.
Right.
Just for you to be aware, because I think given our environment, especially if you're talking about the things that the government may not like, you know, who's to say that they can't relinquish your citizenship? I mean, it could be very possible for that to happen to any of us. But especially if you're a green card holder, this should be pertinent information that you guys should know, especially given what's happening to Mahmoud Khalil. So this is an article. Shout out to Reef for pulling this for me.
You're welcome.
That he pulled from, curated from Consortium News, which was pulled from the court conversation. So this article written by Gabriel J. Chin, which he titles Green Card Holders' Rights. As pro-Palestinian protest leader Mahmoud Khalil faces deportation, legal scholar Gabriel J. Chin lists 3 major differences between the rights of citizens and lawful permanent residents, otherwise known as green card holders. So actually, let me get my screen. There we go. So Gabriel reads as follows. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that the government will deport lawful permanent residents who support Hamas and came to the U.S. as students with an intent to, quote, to rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities, referring to the Palestinian rights protests at universities in 2024. And if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card, as a result of that visa while you're here and those activities, we're going to kick you out. It's as simple as that. This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with, Rubio said on March 12, 2025. That policy is now instead Mahmoud Khalil, a recent graduate at Columbia University and a leader in the Palestinian rights protest movement at the school. Khalil, a Palestinian who was born in Syria, faces deportation after he was arrested on March 8, 2025 in New York City. The Department of Homeland Security said that the Secretary of State had determined Khalil's presence or activities in the country pose serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. Khalil entered the U.S. on a student visa in 2022. In 2024, he received a green card and became a lawful permanent resident, meaning he has the legal right to work and stay in the U.S. There are an estimated 12.8 million lawful permanent residents in the country. Khalil's lawyers say that his arrest and pending deportation are unconstitutional. In many respects, the rights of lawful permanent residents and citizens are similar. Yet, citizens and lawful permanent residents do not enjoy equal status under the law. And let's find out exactly what those are. The Supreme Court and other courts recognize that lawful permanent residents have First Amendment rights to free speech. Yet, the Supreme Court upheld deporting lawfully permanent residents in the 1950s based on their political party activity, in particular membership in the Communist Party.
Yeah.
So while lawful permanent residents may not be criminally prosecuted for their political speech or activity, What they say or write may affect their ability to remain in U.S. if the government determines they are a security risk. I, being Gabriel, a scholar of international law, here are the three major differences between the rights of citizens and lawful permanent residents. 1. Limited political rights. Lawful permanent residents are people born in other countries who can legally work and live in the U.S. for as long as they like. I'll add as long as your green card is valid. They may enlist in the U.S. Armed Forces, apply to become U.S. citizens, and are legally protected against discrimination by private employers. States also generally cannot discriminate against lawful permanent residents, though states may require certain groups of people, such as teachers or police, to have U.S. citizenship. Between 1820 and 1920, non-citizens routinely participated in different aspects of government, including voting, holding office, and jury service in many states and territories. And again, that depends on the state. I know, like in Massachusetts, for example, you're not able to vote, for example,
right?
If you're a green card holder. So you have to check with your state to determine what rights you have or may not have, depending on your green card status is determined by your state. These days, states and the federal government generally allow only citizens to serve on juries, hold political positions, and vote. With a few exceptions, such as voting in some local elections, permanent residents are not able to do any of those things.
You got it?
The distinction between non-citizens and citizens extends to other areas of life, such as public benefits. The Supreme Court has frequently stated, in the exercise of its broad power over naturalization and immigration, Congress regularly makes rules that would be unacceptable if applied to citizens. In practice, this means that the federal government, and to a much lesser extent states, do not offer public benefits, such as Medicaid and other kinds of government support, to lawful permanent residents and other non-citizens on the same basis as citizens. For example, lawful permanent residents must generally wait 5 years before becoming eligible for certain programs intended to support low-income people, such as supplementary security income and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, food stamps. Finally, unlike citizens, lawful permanent residents can lose their legal immigration status. Congress has enacted many grounds for deporting a non-citizen or stopping them from entering the country. Some courts have found that the U.S. government can deport a lawful permanent resident because of national security or terrorism concerns, even if the person has not committed a crime. The Trump administration argues that they can deport lawful permanent residents like Leo under the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act, which states that a lawful permanent resident can be deported if the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe that this person would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. The Trump administration has initiated deportation proceedings against Khalil on this ground. U.S. law also provides that any non-citizen can be deported if the Secretary of State and Attorney General jointly determine that the person is associated with terrorism or pose a threat to the U.S. In addition, the law says that an immigrant can be deported if they endorse or espouse terrorist activity or persuade others to endorse or espouse terrorist activity or support a terrorist organization. Still, lawful permanent residents are entitled to certain basic rights, such as retaining a lawyer to represent them in administrative hearings and court before they are deported. By contrast, the U.S. government cannot deport a U.S. citizen for any reason. However, sometimes U.S. citizens are deported by mistake. I'm going to put that in quotes, air quotes, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that, though.
I can also, that's what I'm saying, because I could see that if you're a birthright, if you were born in the country, but if you're a naturalized citizen.
I mean, there's plenty of reasons they might deport U.S. citizens if they're just not paying attention. You know,
Right. And that's why I'm saying, like,
yeah,
does a naturalized citizen, if you're able to do this with a green card holder, what's to say they can do that with a naturalized citizen more so? So that's kind of like where my concern is. But anyway, indeed, the Supreme Court has found that while it is constitutional to execute a military member for desertion in wartime, it would be cruel and unusual punishment to deprive them of citizenship. There have been few recent court cases testing the scope of deporting lawful permanent residents on national security grounds based on pure speech. In 1999, the Supreme Court ruled that if a person is deportable, they are deportable, even if there is some other reason that motivated the government's deportation proceedings, such as a suspicion that the non-citizen is involved with crime or terrorism. The Supreme Court also then held that the government could deport non-citizens for technical visa violations, even if the case was based on the government's belief that the non-citizens were associated with a terrorist group. There is also some precedent arguing that deportation based on adverse foreign policy consequences is too broad and non-specific to be constitutional. Indeed, Marianne Trump Barry, the sister of the president, held this opinion when she was a federal judge in the mid-1990s. But Samuel Alito, then an appeals court judge, overturned Barry's ruling on procedural grounds in 1996. For its part, the Supreme Court has occasionally held that very broad and indeterminate deportation grounds are void for vagueness, meaning so sweeping and imprecise that they are unconstitutional. Khalil's lawyers appeared with the U.S. government lawyers before a federal judge in New York on March 12th. Their goal, to get Khalil moved from internment in Louisiana back to internment in New York. But that may well be just the beginning of a long haul for the Palestinian student. Courts have proven reluctant to second-guess security grounds rationales in immigration cases. For this reasons, cases like Khalil may go on for years. And I think that's the point. I think, as I said, probably 2 weeks ago now, that they're looking to make this case, well, they're looking to make an example of Khalil, like Trump, just really essentially to scare people. But I think it's also, I think given the context of the case, and like the government has to prove that he is essentially a security threat. And, you know, really, if especially what you're seeing online, there really hasn't been any evidence to suggest, you know, that in any way Khalil has been, you know, problematic, so to speak. That being said, we do know that he is involved in a documentary that Macklemore is producing. So my question is, how is that going to affect this case, if at all? And actually, now thinking about it, will Macklemore be implicated in this possibly?
I think it's more like this reminds me of if we remember back to the Assange case, right? And how they claimed that he would be persecuted for, you know, his, like, you know, the nation he was born in, being Australia, right? And he wouldn't be an American citizen and therefore wouldn't get the First Amendment rights, right? You know, that was part of their legal case, right? It definitely, I feel like there's a lot of parallels here too, right? So I don't know. I mean, clearly, you know, they're using that probably parts of the Patriot Act, I would imagine, to like go after this, you know. I know he's also using what's the Aliens of a like Foreign Power Act or whatever, something like that. The same one that put Japanese people into internment camps, right? You know, he's been sending people to like Bukele and that kind of stuff when in regards to deporting individuals. So not the best track record on those policies for sure. So But yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, you're right. I definitely feel like this is definitely giving Assange to me in terms of more than likely this case will probably be prolonged. I would argue probably for Trump's entire term, honestly.
Well, he's in the trial's
Louisiana
in
right now.
New Jersey, right? I think it got moved to New
that's the
Jersey.
thing. Right, yeah. So they're working on getting him back in the New York area because right now he's in Louisiana. But yeah, but it's definitely going to be long. But I think the idea is that to keep it so long that hopefully people will forget, or most people will forget. Kind of, I wouldn't say. I think Assange. I think in a sense this is slightly better than Assange because more people are aware of what's going on. No one really had a clue of what was happening to Assange besides really us in independent media. So, but so while he has a right in terms of free speech, he is protected under that, under the law as a green card holder. The argument, as Gabriel is saying, that what the government is going to try and do is commit to show, and this is what they're going to have to prove, is that he is a security threat to the United States. Now, so really it's the idea of finding, I think in the government's mind, a judge who will essentially favor them, which, given the state of our country right now, I wouldn't say it's easy, but highly likely that, they will try and find someone who will, make the verdict in the government's favor. But you never know. But as I said, they have to prove it. So, but again, given...
Well, and this is also connected to Columbia, like, reviewing programs for, like, Center for Palestinian Studies, Institute for Israel and Jewish Studies, Middle Eastern, South African Studies, right? Which I'm betting it also coincides with Trump's, like, and particularly, like, Florida politicians' education doctrines, right? So, that's going to be an interesting angle of this too. So,
well, yeah. So I think it's just this will be larger than Khalil, and I think especially given what we've spoken about in terms of colleges, and not even colleges, like schools, K-12 schools, are really cracking down on what is being talked about regarding Israel, and especially or lack of anything related to Palestine at all. So I think this is definitely, either way, a story that we should be watching closely, because the implications for this, I think, will be extremely problematic, across the board. But more importantly, it's the idea of, especially if you're a green card holder, to be very, and I hate the idea of censorship, but it's still the idea of, like, be extremely careful, but extremely strategic in what you say. And your actions, especially if you are looking to support the cause in Palestine, because your actions,
we know they're watching social media. They're using AI to track a lot of stuff, so you definitely have to be kind of careful with that. But it doesn't mean stop talking about it, though. So keep that in mind. But yeah, but it could get you demonetized if you talked about it, though. I don't know anyone who would have that problem. Maybe us. We might have the problem. So you can go to code.fv.com/indienewsnetwork, scan that QR code on your screen, or as always, links are in the description below. We appreciate any little bit of dollary dues you could throw at us, but if you can't, times are tough, eggs are expensive, you can go to just hit the like button, find that subscribe button if you haven't already. Share the video. Some of you already have. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. How worried are you about these deportation things? Otherwise, thanks for watching. We did it. Number 1. Done. On to the next one. We should check the chats, though. I see Oz the Boomer showed up. Look at you, Oz. Doing the thing. Showing up. Appreciate you. Everyone go check out Beauty and the Boomer if you haven't already. We got Sean the Accord Lord in the house. Talking about he's about to get tornadoes there in Washington. That's going to be fun. You know? Annie M. There's Twitter. Indy saying he never got alerts. That also happens. I know people have hit the bell. YouTube still doesn't inform you, so just try to check in. We're always here Wednesdays. So
generally speaking.
Let me check the Rumbles. Jack's Page with a $5 donation. Hola, gentlemen.
Yay.
Always love you. Catch you live. Much love and respect. Boosted the show on Twitter. Appreciate you, Jax. Jax, I love those pictures. Every time you post us on the big screen, goes straight to my head. I love it. Makes me feel good. You know, I'm like, look at me up on the TVs. Look at me do it. So, looks good out here. Yep. Appreciate you. Appreciate the $5 over on the Rumble. So if you haven't, we have a Rumble page. You can go to our links and find us there. I'll also link it for people in the chat. So, you know, go over there. Let us know you're not a lizard person. Use those opposable thumbs. All right. You ready to get to our next one? Speaking of lizard people.
Yep.
Cool. Planet Betar. We're here. We're on the planet Betar. Everyone's favorite conehead, Baldar, I think. Correct? If I remember correctly, if I remember my 90s SNL well enough. But unfortunately, it won't be as fun as Coneheads. It's going to be a little more irritating. Do you know anything about Betar? Have you seen them around?
No.
Okay. Famously, they gave like Norman Finkelstein a pager. They're pretty despicable individuals. So Alan Macleod wrote about them. Betar, the far-right hate group helping Trump deport Israel's critics. So it goes along with our previous segment. But Alan writes, a far-right pro-Israel group with a history of support for terror and genocide is working closely with the Trump administration, preparing dossiers on thousands of pro-Palestinian figures it wants deported from the United States. Betar US is known to have had several meetings with senior government officials and has claimed credit for the arrest and detention of Mahmoud Khalil, a leader of the nationwide anti-genocide student demonstrations that began at Columbia last year. Ross Glick, the group's executive director until last month, noted that he met with a diverse set of influential lawmakers, including Democratic Senator John Festerman and aides to the Republican Senators Ted Cruz and James Lankford, and that all supported Betar's U.S. campaign to rid the country of thousands of terror supporters. Again, goes back to this Patriot Act-y kind of McCarthyite stuff. So, shortly after Glick's trip to D.C., Trump signed an executive order titled Additional Measures to Combat Anti-Septicism that promises the removal of residential aliens who violate our laws, and not the fun conehead aliens. Definitely not those. So, to quell pro-Hamas vandalism and intimidation, and to investigate and punish anti-Jewish racism and leftist anti-American colleges and universities. So, just completely full of it. Trump himself announced that Khalil's arrest, which made worldwide headlines, was the first of many to come. We know that there are more students at Columbia and other universities across the country who've engaged in pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, anti-American activity, and the Trump administration will not tolerate it. He wrote on Truth Social, the 45th and 47th president has also stated, funny on Truth Social, the free speech platform, much speech, much wow. Yeah. Plans to deport communists and Marxists from the United States. So just dig McCarthy right out that grave. Why don't you? Just dig him right up. Wheel him out. So even those who are citizens, I don't know how you do that, you dumb fuck. As such, this marks an escalation in government-backed suppression of dissent not seen since the McCarthyist era of the 1940s and 50s. Have you no decency, sir? I'll start that shit, I guess. Betar US describes itself as a loud, proud, aggressive, and unapologetically Zionist movement dedicated to defending Israel's legitimacy and strengthening the Jewish connection to the land of Israel. This includes taking action where others won't, a rather ominous phrase considering the aggressive activities of the Jewish organization it derives as passive and weak. I wonder if they would feel if other organizations said the same things, if they would be as welcome to that language.
Right.
Last week, the group appeared to openly admit to organize an assassination attempt on Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories. Joined to give us Francesca a pager in London on Tuesday, it posted online, in apparent reference to the September pager attack on Lebanon carried out by the Israeli military. I do believe John Festerman and Trump both got pagers on plaques.
Pagers too, yes.
So I would, if I were you guys, I would check those for microphones. I'm just saying. It would seem very easy to me to bug those, but what do I know? The incident killed dozens of people, injured thousands more civilians, and was widely condemned. A lot of children, if I do remember, and medical staff who are the people with pagers. So even former CIA Director Leon Panetta as an act of international terrorism. So last month, Betar US made a similar threat against Jewish American writer Peter Beinart after the New York Times published his article criticizing the state of Israel. It put out a statement reading, "We urge all Jews on the Upper West Side to give Peter Beinart a 3-pager emoji. He is a traitor, a capo, and we must oppose him." Thus, Betar not only smeared him as a Nazi collaborator and called for his assassination, but also appeared to reveal Beinart's home location. So
how they not? Well, we know why. But
we know why. We know why. God forbid they actually do anything illegal and get like consequences. So, you know, a similar incident occurred to political scientist Norman Finkelstein in an effort to intimidate him into silence. A Betar member slipped a pager into his coat pocket, filming the incident after Finkelstein refused to stop speaking out after injustice in the Middle East. Last weekend, the group attempted to break up his public event in D.C. Perhaps most outrageously, Betar has also publicly placed a bounty on the head of Palestinian American activist Nerdine Kiswani, telling her that you hate America, you hate Jews, and we are here and won't be silent. $1,800 to anyone who hands that jihadi a beeper. And later, repeating the offer, after worldwide pushback, the organization has deleted its post calling for political killings of international officials and U.S. citizens. You want to know why? Because apparently they are distractions. That's what Betar said, that those are distractions. And you can see her there with the tweet above, $1,800 to anyone who hands her a beeper. So John Stone weighs in, pretty wild how terrorists are allowed to just openly incite and incentivize acts of terrorism on this platform now. Like, if this was on the other foot, people would be arrested and deported.
Arrested, right, exactly.
You know,
God forbid a black person or black organization says shit like that.
Yeah, what happens to Panthers if they do this, huh? Speaking of which, like, I mean, they still shoot Fred Hampton's grave in Louisiana. So, you know, Chicago police take, you know, fucking car trips all the way down. So, isn't that fun? Yeah, where's the outrage, people? Huh? Where's it at? In addition, Betar has regularly attempted to intimidate or shut down movements or gatherings protesting Israeli crimes. At a student event at UCLA, Betar publicly stated, "We demand police remove these thugs now, and if not, we'll be forced to organize groups of Jews to do so. Bring it on, homeboy." In January, it tried to break up a New York City vigil for Hind Rajab, a five-year-old Palestinian girl brutally murdered by Israeli forces. Betar members filmed the event, telling attendees they were with ICE and using facial recognition technologies to obtain their identities, which would subsequently be used to deport them. Keep in mind, we've talked about Israel using that technologies. So there's some trouble there and fear-mongering as well. In recent weeks, Betar members have also chanted hate speech outside a Bangladeshi mosque in New York City and attacked people who protested the illegal sale of occupied West Bank land and an auction in Brooklyn. I thought they didn't like defamation of people's religions. I thought that was their thing. That Betar is a hate group is barely in question. Even notoriously pro-Israel groups such as the ADL, an organization the FBI once noticed was almost certainly being bankrolled by the Israeli government, I don't know how they couldn't be, have included it in lists of extreme hate organizations. The ADL notes that Betar uses the fascist Kahanist slogan, "For every Jew, a 22," meaning Jews should be armed with 22 rifles. Homeboy, they make bigger millimeters now. I'm just saying. You don't need no 22 no more. We got bigger ones. And has indicated it wishes to work with the Proud Boys, a far-right American gang. Weird, right?
How they not declared a terrorist group?
I think they are. I do believe.
So why isn't anyone but protesters are the problem now.
We're too busy worried about children, with some picket signs, Colin. We're too worried about that. Kent State taught us nothing, apparently. What do I know? But yes, I'm with you. I'm with you on these questions. Betar frequently reveals in violence against civilian populations and calls for genocide against Palestinians. Fuck your ceasefire. Turn Gaza to rubble, they announced last month. Betar firmly supports the plan to remove Palestinians from Gaza, aka ethnic cleansing. Betar, they added in response to a post detailing the vast number of Palestinian babies killed since October 7th. It replied, "Not enough. We demand blood in Gaza. Children's blood, infants' blood, babies' blood." That's what they want. So, yeah, despicable people. No mercy, they say. Two can play that game, you realize. Two can play that game. Just saying. You might reap what you sow in that regard. So,
right.
What's the golden rule? What's Jesus's golden? Oh, wait, they don't do that. They don't do that whole New Testament thing, right? Well, Betar traces its origins back over 100 years. The group was founded by early Zionist leader Zeev Jabotsky, a far-right paramilitary force. So that's what it started as.
Very, very Semitic name there.
Yes, and keep in mind that Zionism predates the Holocaust, just saying, by about a lot. One that explicitly stood against the leftist Jewish groups who dominated at a time when Jewish and socialist were seen by many as virtually synonymous. Jabotsky believed that establishing a state in Palestine would require the creation of what he called a new Jew, one that would be willing to fight and die for Zionism. To this end, Betar was established as a fighting organization and received generous funding from conservative benefactors. Jabotsky introduced members to swear an oath to the unborn Israel. "I devote my life to the rebirth of a Jewish state with a Jewish majority on both sides of the Jordan. The creation of such a state, therefore, would require the mass extermination or expulsion of the region's native inhabitants." Betar's former name was Brit Yosef Trumpeldor, named after a Jewish settler who was killed in 1920 in an early firefight with Palestinians over disputed land. I thought this all started October 7th, Colin.
Right.
It was exactly men like Trumpeldor. Why is it Trump Eldor? Why is it Trump Eldor? Huh? Anyone wanna fucking tell me that? Huh? Who Jabotsky believed were necessary in order to win, in contrast to the majority of European Jews, who he saw as passive and weak. That seems anti-Semitic, sir. 1920s Europe was a time of rising anti-Semitism, and despite their inherent anti-Jewish nature, many conservative Jews admired the discipline and organization of fascist paramilitaries, such as Hitler's brown shirts. Betar was modeled on these groups, with Jabotsky believing that Zionist project's success was dependent on the establishment of such organizations. So right on the face of this, fascist as hell. So, because of their anti-communist, anti-worker outlook, conservative money flooded into Betar, helping it become one of the largest and most influential Jewish organizations by the 1930s, with membership rising to around 70,000 people. Betar leaders would go on to become key figures in Israeli politics. These included Prime Ministers Menachem Begin and Yitzhak Shamir, as well as Benjamin Netanyahu, the father of current Benjamin Netanyahu. So, what other organizations, Collin, around the 1930s received a whole bunch of conservative money? You want to tell me that? You know, all the way up into the 60s and 70s?
And,
well, them too?
Well, no, but...
I'm thinking of the one with a
starts
K.
with a letter. Yeah, starts with a
Couple
letter.
of those letters.
3 times.
Couple of white hoods. Okay, just making sure I'm on the right path. Does that look familiar, Collin? That photos like that? Okay.
Yep.
And I mean, Boy Scouts. Where do they come from? Who were they modeled after? This is a Polish town in Zakopane in 1935, right? Looks very, very familiar to me. A particular youth group comes to mind. But while this depiction of Betar as a fascist terrorist group might sound biased or one-sided, much of this information comes directly from the organization itself. On its official website, Our History section, Betar writes, emphasis added, Betar thus became an incubator for the development of right-wing Zionist ideas, and its supporters are sometimes referred to as Jewish fascists. In Palestine, Betar members facilitated illegal Jewish immigration and were active instigators of disturbances and violence, frequently bombing Arab civilian areas in response to attacks and waging guerrilla warfare against the British. So, thus, the organization does not shy away from the fascism label, and it proudly notes that it frequently carried out terror organizations against Arab civilians in Palestine. At some point in the past week, after it began receiving increased scrutiny for its connections to the Trump admin, Betar has removed both the fascist moniker and the boast about bombing Arabs, but the original page can still be viewed via the Internet Archive. Thank you, Internet Archive. Since October 7th, Betar has greatly upped its presence in the United States thanks to far-right Israeli-American businessman Ron Taroshian and executive director Ross Glick. In July 2024, it successfully applied for tax-exempt nonprofit status, meaning it is classified by the government as a fucking charity. Since our revival in 2024, Betar has made a powerful impact across the U.S., and it's just getting started. We are recruiting, developing, and empowering Jews to become unapologetic Zionist terrorists. leaders. Defending Israel on campuses, in communities, and across all platforms, Betar writes. Yet an investigation by the Intifada, the Electronic Intifada, Indie Media Award winners, suggests that Betar might have illegally fundraised. Yay! Illegal money, the best kind.
On that.
The same report notes that Glick has faced serious allegations of sex crimes. In 2019, his former girlfriend found nude images of herself posted on her company's official Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter pages. What? Glick was arrested and charged with unlawful use of a computer and unlawfully posting the lewd pictures. He pleaded guilty to second-degree harassment, a violation, and a paid fine. Fuck, a slap on the wrist he got, Collin.
What?
Jesus Christ. Ugh. Anyway, commentators across the political spectrum agree that Trump administration is pushing the U.S. in a rightward direction, in the process running roughshod over constitutional protections and guarantees. In doing so, they found... Yes?
I argue that's been on its way thanks to Biden.
Yeah, it's been the case. There's no right wing. It's just all fucking the money wing. In doing so, they have found allies in many controversial groups that such a small and new movement like Betar already enjoys such influence within the White House has already raised eyebrows. Given Israel's determination to continue its genocidal campaign against its neighbors and Trump's limitless support for its ally, oh, but he's anti-war, the peace guy, it appears likely that Betar's power is expected to grow under the current administration. If this is the case, this is bad news for those who value the right to speak freely and to protest. It is therefore crucial that the group be understood and scrutinized rather than be allowed to operate in the shadows behind closed doors. Thoughts, Care Bear?
Play the Mitzi clip.
Sure. I think it's around here. Come on. You can do it. You can do it. I believe in you.
Fucked.
Yay! We did it. Hopefully not too
But yeah,
bad.
it's just
So
well, no, I would imagine it's going to get worse before it gets any better, if it does get better at all. And yeah, so again, this is why we said in the last segment to please be careful, because you know, as I said, even I would argue, even being a citizen is not going to guarantee you safety at this point. So, as we said, like they have deported people, quote unquote, by accident.
Trump actually said he's going to deport them even if you're a citizen.
Right.
Even if you're a
So,
citizen.
you know,
I imagine internment
right,
camps
so-
are on the fucking drawing board. So, you know,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right, but yeah, I think it's just funny that like people talk about when groups of color come together to actually try and do something that we see them as a threat, but someone like the KKK has not been determined as a terrorist group. This group has not been determined as a terrorist group, but yet someone like again like
Mahmoud
Nelson
Cleo.
Mandela,
yes.
yeah,
Just recently got off
Right.
that list. So,
terrorist threat for wanting to end
terror organization, terrorist attacks, terrorism.
what? So that could keep
And-
going for a while.
Right. And look, yes, we knew Trump was going to do this, but again, we have to blame the Biden administration for
Setting all this
keeping
up.
the seat warm,
Yep.
for allowing this heinousness to be where they are right now. So, you know, because they obviously are speaking up more about it because it's Trump, but when Biden was doing it, or kind of laying the land for, look, I keep saying, you know, Republicans always benefit from the policies that the Democrats subtly enforce.
Yep.
Because they get to do it brazenly, and yeah, they'll get shit for it, but Republicans don't care.
No.
So
Bad news, bad things are happening.
Fucking awful.
yeah, so yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than, you know, just you all just obviously, you know, we want you all to use your gift. Really, that's what it is at this point, a gift of free speech, you know, but we consider that a right. But like, again, who determines rights in this country? It's not you, it's the people in power. And if they don't like something, they can easily take those rights away from you. So no one is immune. And I'll argue, like, especially if you're Jewish, who thinks, let's make it more clear. If you're a Zionist and you believe that you're kind of safe from all of this, don't think for a second that anything like this will not happen to you too. Because once they're done with everybody that they want, you're next. So anyone who is Jewish, who is anti-Zionist, should really be speaking out against it in terms of how blatantly terrorist this group is and other groups like them who are trying to push our country. Yeah, like the argument is our government has been to the right. You know, it's now kind of blatantly right now. But,
yeah,
you know, if you're not speaking out against this, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say about you at this point, because this is very obviously a glaring way of overlooking what this country allegedly stands for. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say of it.
I feel you, dude.
Never let anyone take your joy from you.
What? Well, talking about these things is certainly why we're demonetized and probably on a few watch lists. So if you want to keep the lights on, go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, scan that QR code to your screen, or as always, link in the doobly-doo. But if you can't give monetarily, like and subscribe, hit that share button, leave a comment, let us know how terrible this organization is in your own words. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Coolio, the rapper from the 90s specifically. You ready to get to the chat? Let's do it.
Yeah, I think
I saw Rumble. Caden, the Zionist cruelty, crying exhausted face, practically. Can't agree more. I saw Sean the Accord Lord saying Betar is a sick group. Correct. What else we got? So, Old Testament is a lie. That God of Abraham monster is no God. I mean, I hate to tell you about the New Testament too, but that's just me, your atheist friend. But Vicky Adams says kindergarten. Sean asks, wait, the Boy Scouts, you don't say? Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, the British one specifically, which then morphed into the American one, was indeed based off Hitler's youth. If I remember correctly. So, could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but otherwise...
Yeah, you might want to check that.
Yeah, I will. I do believe that is the case. Someone could fact check me in the chat if they want to. Do a little Google search. I'm sure that's going to go well. Timeline Orca said, pay to fine. Thinking face, the rich don't get punished. Yeah, dude, if any of us did that, anybody else, you'd be canceled. You know, anyone in Hollywood did that, they'd be out of here. So... Sister Katharina slapped me on the wrist once, says Desert Mantis. I feel like that's a letter you have to write a particular magazine. Snow Himbo, very important message, says don't forget to smash that like. So get down there, do what he says. Listen to the Himbo. So Timeline Orca said Saint Misty.
We're fucked.
She is correct. So what else? Indy asks, who are these people? Go ahead.
Kill your
egregores.
Mm-hmm. And with you, Reef, I don't believe the New Testament, but the teachings are pretty based.
Yep. Just like there's some lines in Harry Potter that are pretty good. The rest of it's terrible, though. You know, especially the author. But I could talk about the authors of those other books too, or being not fantastic. But Indy mentioning that Gen X did a ton of work exposing Betar. We did cover that. I'm sure Indy could link that clip in the chat if he so wished. If he actually knows where that's at. So, Orca Zionists are not religious. They're indoctrinated. Plenty of rabbis would tell you that is not part of their religion. So, appreciate that.
Speaking of, if anyone knows an anti-Zionist rabbi, let us know.
Happy to have him on. I got questions. So, please reach out. Send us some info.
We've been actually we've been actually trying to connect with one to kind of share. Because obviously we're not Jewish, so we don't know what is necessarily being said in synagogues across the US, but like obviously we want to talk to somebody who can speak more into that and all in all that. So anyone who knows an anti-Zionist rabbi that we can get in touch with to interview. Desert Mantis said
Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. But anyway, we'll look into it. We'll see if we can find some people. I have some questions to ask. But Indy says, look it up at indienewsnetwork.com. Yep. Rabbi David Weiss also mentioned. Mir Vizier, I think, is the other one. that I've seen online frequently. Dabby Dab says there's some lines in the epic Gilgamesh that are nearly identical to the Bible and predates it. Same thing with a lot of Viking rituals and stuff like that. It's all an amalgamation of particular traditions and stuff, right?
And stories. Yeah. Look, I told you guys this. Like, even when I was in Catholic school, I was told by my priest teachers at that time that especially the first 5 books of the New Testament were nothing more than a myth.
Yeah.
This was for me in high school, in a Catholic school at that. So just to give you some context, and yeah, if you know history, especially at that time, you'll find that a lot of cultures back then had a very similar flood story, a very similar creation story.
Well, it's like
et cetera.
The ending of like Ragnarok is like 2 people in a garden naked, you know, and then the Bible too, Electric Boogaloo, throws them right in the beginning. So Sulamoon says there was an attempt by the Nazis to align the Boy Scouts with the Hitler Youth in the run-up to the Second World War. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels there. So, but apparently myself, Indian JB, are the only one who can pronounce egregores correctly. So most people just shorten it to KYE, if I do believe, because God forbid they try pronouncing some stuff. But well, you ready to get to our next one?
Yeah. So this one we've kind of held on for the last 2 weeks. We were not live last week, but it still applies to still what's happening, because there's definitely been a lot of talk about it. So as you guys might know, President Donald Trump signed executive order, not sure, forgot when, but essentially dismantling USAID. So how's that important? It's tied to, the way I'm going to say it is charity, because that's what it is, overseas. And what we're going to feature about is Africa. So we want to be as nuanced as possible. So we want to give both takes on how funding to the continent is important. There is some good that comes out of the funding, but we're also going to hear from Africans themselves who believe that not really necessary, given the resources that are in Africa that are unfortunately not sourced properly, that they really don't need the aid, along with other reasons. So we're going to hear from both sides tonight.
Okay.
Look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
What?
So I guess this is from Substack.
Okay.
But the blog is called The Bulwark.
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
So this blog was written by, is kept by Holly Berkeley Fletcher. And she writes what USAID's dismantling looks like on the ground in Africa. Locals in Malawi and Kenya who worked with the agency faced stalled development, canceling programming, and shortages of life-saving supplies. I think we will forget America is even there. So this is what she's reporting on the ground in those countries. So just as context, the names that she is referring to these Africans are aliases, obviously to protect the identities as far as the work down there. So just to keep that in mind. John is old enough to remember the dark days when AIDS ravaged his country and his family. Living in Malawi, he has seen close up the difference made by life-saving work of PEPFAR, which is administered in large part through the U.S. Agency of International Development. For him, the American government has been a steady, sustaining presence for many years for a multiplicity of programs under the umbrella of USAID. He had believed it was a relationship of mutual benefit to Malawi and America. Now, in the wake of the Trump administration's dismantling of USAID, he wonders what will happen to his country. He worries the deadly past might revisit. We are so scared we might see people dying like that again, he told me on the phone this week. John's work brings him into contact with many USAID employees and projects in Malawi. In particular, he knows that USAID brings badly needed development and services to rural areas, which in Malawi, as in many other African countries, are chronically underserved by their governments. Wealth, power, and influence tend to be concentrated in the cities. Specifically, he describes to me the importance of USAID educational programming for rural children. The agency has built rural schools with science labs and libraries, both rare in those settings. John thinks support for rural girls' education is especially vital in a country where many families don't prioritize educating their daughters. He says USAID programming has ensured girls don't miss school during their periods because they lack feminine products, a common problem for girls in Africa. USAID had focused on the girl child, John says. They focused on so many problems facing girls in rural areas.
I mean, they do a lot more than that. But I mean, this is the bulwark, so it's going to not be great, and they're probably going to defend USAID to the nth degree. But definitely some issues for that, as many have brought up.
But what I do appreciate is that, especially being there, these are issues that are apparent.
Oh yeah. Well, it used to be one of the only ways Africa got aid was to claim it was for AIDS research. You know, so
and even that is questionable. So
yeah,
I don't think that will be a story we can report because YouTube. But you can go online and find out. That's all I'm going to say. And we're just going to leave it there. But anyway, but then the cuts came. The students in the villages may not know what is happening, but they are affected. Over the last few weeks, John has witnessed the sheer chaos of USAID's dismantling in one of the world's most aid-dependent countries. The U.S. government provided $350 million in aid across multiple sectors last year, equivalent to 13% of Malawi's national budget. Its permanent cessation would not only be a humanitarian catastrophe, but an economic one. John's own employment and that of many Malawians knows is in danger. He tells me people report to work each day not knowing if they still had a job. Everyone looks sad because no one knows what will happen, he says. We may pretend we are okay, but we are not okay. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have repeatedly given as a rationale for gun USAID the prevention of waste, fraud, and abuse. But John expects Malawi will see, as it's already seeing, more waste and corruption. He mentions 2 educational projects that have stopped midstream, leaving half-finished buildings standing idle, construction materials unused, and boxes of books and computer tablets unattended. He fears that without the USAID administration, these supplies will vanish into the ether of the corruption that is all too common in Africa to the benefit of the politically well-connected, if they haven't already. Where is the cement and other supplies? Still there? Stolen? Who knows? He said. Similar concerns were raised by a Kenyan friend, Jane, a home health nurse employed by her county government. County governments manage Kenya's public health system, which distributes antiretrovirals and other medications from afar. Kenya is another country that sees large amounts of US aid programming based on not just on need, but on its status as a stable, democratic, and economically dynamic nation and a regional base for multiple NGOs that operate on the continent. In 2024, USAID invested $359 million in Kenya. Jane's workdays began by going to a government dispensary to pick up food packets and antiretroviral and tuberculosis drugs before visiting the homebound. She says her job has always been made difficult by corruption and mismanagement in the county government. Sometimes there is no food available, and she is often dipped into her own scarce funds to provide for her patients. When you go see a patient and they haven't food, what do? She told me via text. We even seek help from churches. But she's always had access to needed drugs until the last few weeks. She doesn't know with certainty as to why she can no longer reliably receive them. According to a UN report, Kenya should have enough antiretroviral drugs on hand to cover the need for another few months. But Jane already sees a connection between the shortages she's experiencing and the chaos surrounding USAID. She suspects that wealthy and well-connected people are hoarding them in anticipation of them running out. We will lose a lot of patients that we're not supposed to, she messaged me. I asked John about another Trump administration talking point regarding the dismantling of USAID, one I've heard in my own evangelical circles, that USAID aggressively promotes an LGBTQ agenda for its overseas aid. He seemed completely befuddled. I haven't seen anything like that, he said. You know, here in Malawi, most people are not comfortable with this issue, so if there is money going to that, it must be a very small amount. In the educational sector, which John is the most familiar with, the only thing he's seen that might be remotely related is a book that teaches children tolerance for those with HIV. He does not consider those books a problem. They're trying to promote equity, empathy, and coexisting, he said. There is USA programming aimed at supporting LGBTQ communities in Africa, but understanding the context of extreme discrimination far worse than what you see in the United States is essential, as it is for assessing the kind of gender-based programming John told me about. What many Americans might consider EDI, or an LGBTQ agenda in Africa, might be advocating and providing for the basic human rights of people who face severe marginalization, legal persecution, and/or violence, including girls, women, LGBTQ people, and disabled. In some countries, USAID-funded clinics might be the only ones that offer any kind of medical care to LGBTQ people. And I can actually speak to this a little bit more. Not so much LGBTQ, but definitely disabilities, especially special needs. Like, because the idea is like, if you, like, there is no care for generally if you had, especially if you had severe special needs there, like you're just considered trash and you're tossed aside. So the idea, like, I was very fortunate to volunteer at an organization that offered care to their special needs students, which was, you know, in Uganda, which at the time was pretty almost revolutionary. I hate saying it in that way, but it was, because, you know, in Africa generally, unfortunately, the idea is like, if you're special needs, you're cursed and nobody should have anything to do with you. So if anything, I would argue, if you're going to look at it from that standpoint, is, you know, lack of aid will truly affect. It's kind of what we're talking about in terms of the Department of Ed being dismantled or trying to be, you know, care for, you know, special needs students. Very ironic that they say they want to, you know, cut waste, quote unquote, but the very people who will benefit, who otherwise may not get an education, or at least a fair one, or services, are not going to necessarily get it, you know, depending on the aid that will be cut. So, but I think John is right. Like, you know, like LGBT issues is very taboo in most places in Africa. So I haven't seen that at all, at least the last time I went, which was in 2019. Like,
great documentary by Stephen Fry, who's got plenty of issues himself, but he went like did a whole thing on gay communities around the world, how they're persecuted and how they deal with that. And like, you know, he went to Africa and all those like radio shows and all that stuff that, you know, promote anti gay rights stuff over there. He like actively went on one of those shows and like debated. It was a decent episode for sure. People should go check that out.
Right.
But
I do also think, like,
well, yeah, there's,
in terms of like HIV, I think especially here, it's somewhat viewed as, oh, it's the gay disease.
Yeah.
You know, which I think is kind of the implication in Africa. If you have HIV, when often than not, it's through heterosexual relationships.
Yeah, a lot of times rape
through R or DV. So,
correct.
You know, so kind of like that context is often very missed.
Well, there was and this could be misinformation. Like, it could just be fear mongering stuff. But I remember hearing something along the lines of men were taught that like sex with virgins would cure them of it, you know?
Yes.
So
yeah,
I don't know how accurate that actually is, but I
no, it's
did
accurate.
hear that.
No, it's accurate.
So,
No, it's accurate. But I
which
think
what?
mostly it's still the idea of like, now keep in mind, and we talked about this, there's a lot of evangelical,
Yeah.
I would argue, consent
Oh, and plenty of weird stuff over there
in
with that.
many countries of Africa in general. So it's the idea of like, you know, you have to wait till you're married and all this kind of stuff, but kind of the underlying belly is that people will have, you know, premarital sex and not necessarily protect themselves. Because, and even with that, the idea of getting condoms or any kind of
Well,
safe
see,
sex
that's the
protection
thing
is hard to get.
I find interesting
So-
too, because, and this is partly the issue with USAID, right? Is that they mix all this stuff that's theoretically on paper very good, right? And things like sex education there's a article out, I think it's in MintPress right now about Israel infiltrating sexual education programs, right? And funding them to the nth degree and putting their own curriculums in there. And, you know, that's also happening here, right? And we all known for years that USAID is an extension of things like the NED, right? That, you know, fund things for more reasons than just beneficial, right? A lot of times it's control and clandestine operations there as well. So that is part of it.
Right.
So, but now all that stuff that they were doing overtly in places like Syria and with the white helmets and things like that like now that's being brought into a more private situation, right? Which they're looking to privatize almost everything, but more bringing this into the State Department. So it's more cloak and dagger for the most part.
Right.
So, you know, there's definitely some fear mongering on both sides of this for sure.
Right.
So, but I know you brought some stuff that like pushes back on USAID being helpful to Africa.
I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But yeah, let me finish this. I think I have a page of this left, or maybe two. But to continue with HIV, efforts to combat and treat HIV disproportionately help women, as the spread of HIV is closely tied to gender-based violence, which almost half of African women experience, a rate almost unseen anywhere else in the world. There's a danger that even if most USAID programming is resumed, projects like the ones Chan told me about aimed at girls might be labeled DEI and permanently shuttered.
Yeah.
Any programming to assist LGBTQ communities seems a dead letter. I asked John about the broader discussion over aid and dependency, which is a vigorous debate in Africa itself. We'll get more to that in a minute. Critics argue that aid disincentivizes better governments and point out the meager return in economic growth. Even when dispersed through NGOs, they say, foreign aid provides services for which governments can take credit, or at least for which they can avoid blame and accountability from their citizens. We agree we cannot continue to be beggars, John says, but the people who feel the most pain from aid cuts are the innocent. The politicians will find a way, but not the innocent child in the village. Certainly, a wholesale overnight resuscitation does nothing but endanger those who are already vulnerable. John is also bewildered as to why America will see an advantage to itself in ending USAID. USAID made America to be everywhere. Now it's like the lights are turned off, he says. I think we will forget America is even here. Does Trump not know the consequences of this? I mean, you know, Trump don't care. So, John, not your real name, but you're giving Trump way too much credit. You know, like you actually feel that he actually gives a damn. Like you don't. But yeah, as I said earlier, we want to give some nuance. So there is obviously some benefit, you know, to having USAID in these countries. But now we're going to get to, I don't particularly like using them, but they do bring up some good points in foreign policy. But where they talk about the end of USAID is an opportunity for Africa. This is written by Ebenezer Obadare, a senior fellow for Africa Studies at the Council of Foreign Relations. So he argues that reducing foreign aid can help end dependency and promote African agency. What does he mean by that? We will read now. So amid rising concern about China's and Russia's growing influence in Africa, a corresponding apprehension about the United States' capacity to hold its own in the region, President Donald Trump executive order pausing all U.S. foreign assistance funded by or through our State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development has certainly muddied the waters further. Whether or not the legal challenge to the directive is ultimately successful, a U.S. federal judge has ruled that the president overstepped his constitutional authority. The apparent determination of the Trump administration to make all foreign assistance align with U.S. foreign policy under the America First agenda, which what does that mean concerning how he's been more Israel first?
Yeah.
But whatever. Suggests that we are entering a new era with new rules of engagement in both U.S.-Africa relations and U.S. development assistance in Africa. This shift presents an opportunity for African countries to reset their relationship with foreign aid, as well as rethink the moral and philosophical underpinnings of African development. Most of the immediate reaction to the president order has focused on the implications for U.S. geostrategic interests in the region where, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine in early 2022, Washington seems to be on the back foot. Seen from this perspective, shuttering U.S. aid signals an intention to retreat when the United States should be pressing forward and seeking to remain in the good books of its allies. That I kind of disagree with for obvious reasons, given that the United States has no intention to be allies with Africa. It only tends to be allies with Africa
its
in
resources.
terms of what they can get from them. And we talked about that regarding Global Citizen, that organization that John Legend is affiliated with. So it's not all good intentions. And I'll share more of my thoughts on this in a few minutes, but yeah, that's where I kind of disagree with that idea. It also suggests a readiness to surrender the diplomatic initiative to geopolitical competitors such as China and Russia, as well as a contrary of middle powers, including Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, that sense an opportunity in Africa. Furthermore, critics have argued that dismantling USAID is self-defeating, especially insofar as it signals U.S. abandonment for the soft power approach that has seen the continent, you mean, not country, you ask, make gains in the battles of hearts and minds that is invariably part and parcel of international diplomacy. Both of these criticisms have merit. With an average annual disbursement of about $23 billion annually since 2001, USAID has been the face and vehicle of American soft power since its establishment at the height of the Cold War, supporting initiatives in areas including vaccination and HIV prevention programs and support for civil society groups. It stands to reason then that the ripples from this evisceration will reverberate far and wide. Likewise, the most likely beneficiaries in Africa will be China and Russia. Over the years, and more so since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, neither has been particularly shy in its objective of going toe-to-toe with the United States in Africa.
Yeah, that whole paragraph is iffy.
Yeah.
But
again, not a fan of this publication. I mean, I'm only reading it because we have to hear a different side.
Sure.
There is some good parts. But as you guys can tell, this is very skewed in terms of, and again, like the idea of Russia and China becoming infiltrated, that's been happening, sir. Like, China's already made a presence there, given the Belt and Road Initiative, which even with that, as I said in the show, I have issues with. But yeah, let's continue. If their immediate aim is to curtail the U.S. footprint in the region, the long-term goal is unmistakable. to undercut the Western alliance with a view towards maligning liberal democracy, as Moscow's reported investigation of coups across the Sahel, plus its continued material and moral support for the various juntas, attests. Similarly, China's celebrated Belt and Road Initiative and the growing number of Confucius Institutes scattered across the continent, as of July 2020, 61 of them have been established in 46 countries, are nothing but a smokescreen for the spread of Beijing's preferred ideology.
Yeah,
Except this is kind of
memos from the State Department from foreign policy.
right.
You know.
So yeah. So in other words, for people, this is kind of like a snob at communism. It sounds
Yeah.
like communism bad. Which I would argue China isn't really communist anymore. So
yes and no. It's kind of a mix of things.
Right. However, it remains to be seen whether either has the financial muscle or significantly the appetite to cover the anticipated shortfall of the U.S. withdrawal of aid. Despite all of these criticisms, the most important consideration in all of this is how African countries themselves react, and crucially, whether they see Trump's administration's efforts to dismantle USAID as an opportunity to accomplish two related objectives. First, to rethink Africa's relationship to foreign aid, and second, to pose some basic questions about African development and the role of external assistance in instigating it. In other words, how can African countries make the best of a less than ideal situation? Total aid to African countries since 1960 is calculated to be in excess of $2.6 trillion. While foreign aid, especially aid for humanitarian purposes, has no doubt saved many lives, worries about its unwitting negative impact on recipient countries cannot be disregarded. While economist William Easterly has shown that more often than not, it tends to go in the wrong people, Georgetown University's Ken Apollo has argued that it robs countries of the chance to cultivate policy autonomy and helps prop up and prolong the lives of otherwise unsustainable political regimes. That I agree with. Totally. Indeed, aid inflows into specific sectors of the African economy. The healthcare sector is a prominent example, has resulted in the near total disappearance of the state from such sectors. In cases where the state is historically derelict, aid programs that take over its statutory duty as payer for services render effectively ensure that the state no longer has an economic stake. While it may be true that none of this was intended, it does nothing to change the fact that reliance on aid often ends up poisoning the state-society compact in recipient countries, making the state less and less accountable even as both state and society depend more and more on a range of external agents. Recurring accusations regarding the systematic mismanagement of some of these funds, leveled not only by traditional critics of the aid regime, but also, in instructive cases, by aid groups themselves, raise the specter of foreign aid unwittingly bolstering the very elites it aims at undermining through support for pro-democracy efforts. The more autocratic the regime in question, the darker the underlying implications. A related issue is the contested status of non-governmental organizations, which are, at their best, indispensable vehicles for the circulation of transnational democratic social norms, and, at their worst, elite contractions with scant organic connection to the society at large. Over the years, several African governments have enacted laws aiming at bringing NGOs to heel. Rethinking their role in the aid development nexus at this juncture would be a useful entree into a broader and much-needed conversation on the social impact of NGOs within the larger politics of civil society, taking into account the ever-present cleavage between popular needs and elite preferences in much of post-colonial Africa. Beyond the nitty-gritty of Pacific policies is the philosophical and moral dimension of Africa's protracted quest for development. While the authenticity of much donated solicitude for Africa can hardly be faulted, legitimate questions remain about whether the region can truly achieve a breakthrough under the current epidemiological regime, a cornerstone of which is foreign aid, and whether continued reliance on foreign aid in fact puts the continent in permanent jeopardy. This is not so much to deny the obvious benefits of foreign assistance, particularly humanitarian aid, as to indicate that over time, reliance on the type witnessed in a significant number of African countries is likely to create a path dependent that may be difficult to overcome.
Yeah.
Far from a new insight, the danger of aid inducing dependency, whether by weakening local capacity, eroding governmental accountability, or strengthening despotic governments against their citizens, has been a staple of scholarly and popular commentary on Africa's development challenges over the years. The writings of George Atite, I'm going to butcher out these names, I'm sorry, Damasia Moyo, Graham Hancock, and Robert Calarisi have been particularly instructive in this regard. Whether or not Trump's foreign aid freeze is overturned by the courts, the move itself affords a historic opportunity for a serious reassessment of the role of foreign aid in Africa and a consideration of deeper moral and philosophical questions pertaining to the continent's economic development. As former Liberian Works Minister W. Good Moore noted in a recent Setamorph article, there is no future for an Africa that opts to outsource its ambition. While genuine concern has been expressed about the potential impacts for Africa of the dismantling of USAID, the chance for a root and branch reassessment and reform, I would argue transformation, complete transformation, is one that the continent itself cannot afford to miss. While USAID's closure will have many painful consequences across Africa, it is also an opportunity to reopen a new chapter in U.S.-Africa relations, one in which, because it is founded upon mutual respect, the possibility of success is not directly correlated to the amount of cash involved. For African countries that have long clamored for trade over aid, it could be the prelude for a golden age of African agency. Trump has unintentionally given Africa an opportunity. The continent has nothing to lose by seizing it. That last sentence I agree with. I think inadvertently, Trump has given Africa, the continent, a green light to say fuck off to the West. Now, given what we know, what's happening in the Sahel states, Niger, Burkina Faso, of essentially, and that might be a segment we might cover last week about those states, or countries rather, basically kicking out the French colonial system. This could be a way for the continent at large to essentially say to the West, you know, fuck off. Our resources are ours, and we will know what to do with it. So the problem is, obviously, as we've also talked about, there is a lot of corruption given among many African leaders, especially in the larger countries. That's
the thing that article didn't mention at all. Really, is U.S. involvement of like U.S. funded, what's happening in the Congo and with Kigali and, in very similar formats, right? A lot of this money being kind of laundered in humanitarian aid, and or others that essentially gets funneled to do the bidding of the United States. So that's one thing.
That's why I wanted to read this
neither of
article
those
in this
articles
way,
touched on.
especially since we've This is why I wanted to read this article in this way, because especially since what we've talked about, especially within the last few weeks, it gives kind of but I think the common misconception is, like China and Russia are trying to overtake Africa, without realizing that a lot of this aid that's coming in is an illusion in terms of the West actually really trying to overtake Africa in its resources. As you said, given what's happening in Congo, given what's happening in West Africa, especially in Nigeria, given now what's happening in East Africa with Rwanda, especially with the genocide that's happening in Congo right now, and how they're implicated in that. So, as I was saying earlier, there's a lot of African leaders who are basically puppets for the West that I would argue, for all intents and purposes, will want to have this aid continue to come in, and basically they will kiss Trump's ass in order to continue having that funding come in whatever way necessary, to continue to exploit it to the detriment of the people that actually do need it. Now, that's not to say there isn't a need, but the question is, and I've said this for a long time, Africa has the resources. It's the idea of being able to manage them well, which they haven't had the opportunity to do really since the turn of the century.
Right.
So,
well, and
why
you
are they
brought
not
this
in the
lady
position where they're
before
able to
talking about that exact kind of stuff.
Right. So this is Dr. Africana. So she was a former ambassador of the African Union, and she was fired essentially from that position. And given what she's saying here, you can guess why. It's been a while since she's actually like dream guest if I were ever having an opportunity to interview her one day. But given as she's from Zimbabwe initially, but given her connection to the continent, let's see what she has to say regarding USAID.
Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. The social services they're bringing, it's peanuts. The American taxpayer needs to know the billions of dollars that are being given to USAID, a fraction is making it to the people. Let's look at what HIV/AIDS was used to do. We know of a program that was run out of South Africa where they actually were injecting people with the virus. The reason some of the AIDS virus spread as rapidly as it did in Southern Africa, there were some very dirty games being played on African people. They were using Africans as guinea pigs for experimental activities. Even when you look at every aspect, they're using us as guinea pigs. Yes, there is some good, a percentage of some good, but not all of it is done with good intentions. You look at agriculture, they're destroying African agriculture by introducing those GMOs. You plant your seed in one season, your soil is finished. We used to have seeds that we can use from one season to the other. The introduction of GMOs through these agencies, USAID is one of them. We're destroying Africa in a massive way. A little good is coming out, but by and large, the end result, they mean no good. They can turn around and give us an inventory and say, as long as you have been in Africa and also other parts of the world, show us your success rate. You claim you're helping governments with education and healthcare. Show us your success rate. But I also turn around and say, African governments, why do you need this little aid to assist you in providing proper healthcare, proper education? The average African government can afford to provide those services for their people. Why does such a continent that did so much to help Europe recover continue to be so poor? Let's be realistic here. Let's not talk about peanuts. Africa does not need the aid. What we need is for those who are exploiting Africa to stop. Africa has everything it needs. If Africa could have contributed as much as it did to the recovery of Europe post-World War II, why wasn't Africa equally developed? This is a wake-up call to the African leaders to take inventory of what is really happening in their countries. Do they really need the peanuts that are coming in as aid? What is really going out? If I may use the example of what happened in Niger, when the government decided they were going to take over the mining of their uranium. The French companies that were mining the uranium were paying the government 80 cents a kilo for the uranium, and then turning around and selling the uranium to the rest of the world at 200 euros a kilo. So that one move from the Nigerian government to say we are now going to take ownership of our own uranium, they went from realizing about $1 billion in uranium resources to over 300 billion a year. Do you realize what I'm talking about? No amount of NGO could bring that kind of money. And this is only one mineral. Now imagine the country taking inventory of all their minerals and benefiting from their natural resources like the rest of the countries in the Western world. That is what African leaders need to look at.
Do you see that in the horizon of African leaders right now?
They're
do you see them? Who do you see as the standout winners of that
the
kind
Salil
of
State
change?
guys.
And who do you think is still chasing AID contracts?
Let me tell you, we need to look at what's happening in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. President Traore is standing up. He is saying the natural resources in Burkina Faso, they belong to the people of Burkina Faso. Niger is doing the same thing. Mali is doing the same thing. Every leader must look at what's happening in the Sahel nations to say, like anybody else, you must take care of your people. You have your natural resources. You have everything you need to take care of your people. Why do you continue to be beggars? Look at what is being brought in by not only USAID, but all the NGOs in your country. It's peanuts. It's a joke that the African leaders should continue to be beggars of peanuts when you are looking and allowing billions to get out of your country year in and year out, if not trillions, in natural resources that your people should be benefiting from. It is a wake-up call for African leaders to wake up and say, President Trump is saying, US first, America first. You too must say, your country first. Because you have everything it takes. It is a joke. It is embarrassing to see I have not seen any African leader cry over USAID living. I can tell you for a fact, the average African leader privately is celebrating the exit of USAID because they know what is really going on.
I'm not sure if that's entirely true, but I appreciate her sentiment.
Yeah.
You know, but so in a way, assuming that more African leaders take notice of what Traore is doing in Burkina Faso and actually having the balls to stand up to the West, Trump gone fucked up in Africa. But you know what? That might be bad for Trump in a sense, because
I brought you this yesterday, right? About Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger withdraw from La Francophonie, which is like, of course they did,
French
as they should.
The French speaking.
So
we'll probably read this next week just to build off of this.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
But basically they're saying, French, get the fuck out. We want nothing to do with you. So
and it's similar to USAID in the sense that it like is meant to be promoting educational things, like the French language. So
but as a person who's been in
Niger,
Africa,
let me tell you, by the way, Niger, the French pronunciation of Niger, y'all can pick like an African name for your country now. I'm just saying, like, you can do that. You're allowed. You don't got to use the colonizer's name. I'm just saying, what do I know? My complexion is a little pale to be telling you, but you might give the idea a thought. I'm just saying, So, but you were saying
this is why generally, and I think a lot of people in the space have an issue with charity, quote unquote, because this is what essentially what USAID is charity. Because most of the money goes to the overhead, the bureaucracy, and everything, and the rest of it, whatever it remains, goes to the people, which does nothing. So, like, you can send billions and billions of dollars towards aid for these services, which are meant to do good, but like being over there, like the schools are run down, like they barely have any textbooks, or if any, like may have to share textbooks among several kids.
Yeah.
The curriculum is shit.
Many of our peers have outed USAID's where that funding actually goes and how it's actually spent is definitely like clandestine in nature. So, that's even on the face. We're on the face of it. Well, it's meant to do good things and give humanitarian aid. Yeah, but it doesn't most of the time. Most of the time, that has nothing to do with what it's doing. It's like a credit card
really
for the NED.
It'd be one thing if it was meant to do good and we're seeing the results of that and actually seeing if we have the data to back it up. But we don't have that gives any. And this is kind of where, so in a sense, I think Trump is going to get some flack for this down the road, because eventually it might come to a point where they're going to be like, what the fuck are you doing? That was the only thing that can kind of tie us to the resources in Africa, you idiot. Like, that's why I can imagine like people in the administration might say, like, down the road. But for now, as Dr. Avikana said, this can give Africa the opportunity to do inventory on themselves and being like, do we really need this aid, the little that they get in the guise of helping our countries when they have the resources? They just have to be better managed by their own governments in order to do it.
Yeah.
So, and because, as I said, I think she's highly optimistic, and I get why she is. I not so much, given like what I've seen and knowing a lot of these leaders who do not give a shit about their people, that they'd rather take those resources for themselves or enrich their buddies or the West with it and not do anything to develop the needs of their people. Especially given some of the infrastructure that are in a lot of these countries are crap anyway.
Well, so far, we've seen China and Russia with infrastructure like construction in the regions. Like, I know I know there's some possible issues. But,
right. So that's where I can see where he kind of mentions in the article there, where I can see that in terms of, the West is not going to give us money. We'll just tie ourselves closer with Russia and China.
Well, I think that they've been getting actual beneficial like cooperation there. Like, it's not just completely benefiting some Eastern power, like it's.
But look, I can make the argument.
Yep.
Like, at least with China, like they are doing shit that you can actually see.
Yeah.
So,
the Belt and Road Initiative. And more than just that, they're building power plants and all sorts of things.
Right.
So
they are doing stuff. It's just a question on the ground. How is that working? Because again, look, for everyone who talks about China, look, I've said this about China before, but like, it's not like the Chinese, at least, and this is more anecdotal from what people have told me on the ground. So this is what some of the communists who are kind of praising China that we know in our space are not saying to you. Like, what Africans have said to me on the ground is, more often than not, they're not the ones who are owning the resources or the power in those positions. It's the Chinese. It's the supervisors who are Chinese. It's the bosses who are Chinese. The people who are usually overseeing the work are the Chinese, not the Africans who are living there. And the Chinese themselves are profiting off of that and sending that money back to enrich China, not to the countries that they're working in.
Yeah.
So
I don't
no
know
one in
how...
our space is going to say that to you. No one in the space is going to say that to you, but I'm going to tell you based on what people have told me down there.
Yeah.
So I do want to be careful, like,
because I don't know.
And I've said this, I'm
how
very
beneficial.
Mixed.
I've heard both stories, so it's
right. But my thing is, China really should not be involved in what's going on in Africa. Russia really should not be involved in what's going. No, like, first world power really should be involved in what's happening. That would be the ideal for me. Should be the ideal of what should be happening in Africa. As Dr. Avikana said, in the same way that Trump talks about America first, quote unquote, it should be insert African country here first.
Yeah, I would just like the global South to not be exploited anymore. It would be nice if they were capable of, like, which they are, of being their own power first and foremost, which, if we're shifting into multipolarity, that should be one of the poles. So, plenty of Pan-Africanists would agree. But yeah, I mean, definitely some interesting stuff with the USAID, and I'd like to do more research on like what USAID was actually doing in the region for sure. And I know other people have already. So but anyway,
we can definitely look into that more a little bit. But yeah, like I said, just giving you guys both sides, multi-dimensional view.
Yeah.
But talking about stories like these are why we're demonetized. So if you want to support us and be able to continue talking about stories like these, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen there. And any amount, as small as $1, will help a little growing channel to be able to keep the lights on, but more importantly, to be able to continue producing the content that most people in independent media will not be willing to talk to you about. Because we are suppressing the algorithm, YouTube is not doing its job to promote us at all. So the only way that we're able to get any promotion is from you guys. So the best way, and probably the free way for you to support us, is to like, share, and subscribe to our content. And leave comments. Whether you're watching us, going to be watching after our live stream, or when we clip the segments out, let us know in the chat or in the comments, what's your opinion on USA? Do you think they actually do as much good as, our politicians might try to help you to believe? What do you think of Dr. Arikana's statements regarding that USAID is essentially shit and not necessarily needed in Africa, that African countries need to stand on their own autonomy to help the support of their citizens without the aid? Let us know what you think in terms of that, and help us get to free K. We're getting very close. Hopefully we'll hit that at some point this year.
Yep.
And thanks for watching.
Julio. All right. To the chats. The problem is that much of Africa remains neo-colonized, says Desert Mantis.
Yes.
Who also says Africa needs to unify and leverage its power. Agreed. Let me scroll up a bit. So I know Indy was yelling at the...
said China seeks mutual beneficially projects. The U.S. seeks master...
What?
I am going to have to push back on you slightly. Like, it's kind of the equivalent of less bad, like, for China. Yeah, China is not as exploitive as the West is. But as I said, in terms of owning the rights of production, it's not necessarily the Africans. Now, depending on the industry, and again, what I'm saying is more anecdotal, but based on what I've been told on the ground when I've been in Africa, more often than not, the people who are running the show in terms of the industries there are the Chinese. It's not the Africans who are leading in these industries. It's often the Chinese who are supervising or overseeing it. And then
I just don't know if that's completely accurate.
Benefits in the right. Africans benefit in terms of having the infrastructure there, yes. But a lot of that funding but the money that the Chinese get, where does that go? That's not necessarily going back into those countries that they're working in. That's going back to China. So
I mean, as long as both parties are compensated equally,
it's still, right? It's, I would say, a lighter version of.
Yeah.
So, whereas the idea in my mind is that Africa has their own resources. Africa should own the rights of their own production in terms of what's happening in their countries. They shouldn't need the West or the East to assist them, in that. Like, if anything, Africa should be an equal player in terms of what's happening on the global stage, not in terms of kind of a beggar mentality of being underserved that, we need support.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I kind of push back on you a little bit regarding that.
Sure.
But I do understand why you might think that, because even in our space, we have people who kind of talk about China in this way. And having lived in Africa for a bit and been back in Africa since, I can tell that's a little bit more of a mixed view. So,
as would any of those, but anyway, Indy saying the Bulwark is a TDS factory. I agree, having read their stuff previously. Which I think we found the misses in both those places. You know, Desert Mantis. I always thought the Immaculate Conception was that catch by Franco Harris of Terry Bradshaw's pass. I think that would be an interception. I think that's what you're looking for. But
Desert Mantis, Africa needs the technology. Well, Africa has a means to produce it.
Yeah. Which they're already starting to. They're already building chips and stuff like that. That's happening.
Right. So they have it. They have the tools to do it. They just need to know the know-how in order to do it independently.
Yeah.
That's what they need. So
that's already,
they need the know-how in order to do it.
They've been going to like universities and stuff and coming back. That's already been a thing.
But
so it's starting to happen.
Even that's the thing, though, because if Africans are fortunate enough to come to the West to be educated, well, number one is the idea, and like this has happened to so many of my friends that many of them that I know do not live in the countries that they were born in. Many of them feel that they have to go to Dubai or Turkey or Europe or the States in order to make it. And then once they are here, usually, not all the time, but often or not, they make better money. They have a better quality of life relatively. They're not going back to those countries. So that's the problem that
said Congo is now finally starting to get mainstream coverage, but in the wrong way.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So to all designers to talk about.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So all designers to kind of talk about Congo is having a genocide. Why aren't people talking about it? Well, why aren't you, sir?
Yeah.
Or ma'am?
Orca saying,
like you can talk about it, but you don't. So
telling us to think Parenti tried to tell us. KYE America first is code for Israel first. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Know what I mean? Know what I mean? Which we're about to get to. So United States is actually Turtle Island. I'm not that far from Turtle Island, actually. So betcha Tel Aviv has lead-free water, but not Flint, says KYE. Desert Mantis telling people to go check out Brian Belichick's Burletics, one of those, butchering the name. I've seen his tweets occasionally. They're okay. He's got his own biases, but they're all right. So China seeks mutually beneficial projects. You read that, I think. So Sean says, I would say no matter what party will always get 51% in any partnership. Yeah, I just think they use more honey than vinegar right now, both Russia and China. So they're playing the friend card at the minute, which, is at least a lesser evil, but, we know how that goes. Well, I'm ready for our last story. So,
yep,
about that time. So, I'm going to try not to cry during this story. No promises. It's a rough one. If you've been on social media, you've been seeing the new horrors Israel is committing on Gaza after the second round of the ceasefire has failed to come to fruition. Not that Israel honored the ceasefire in any capacity. So we'll talk about that probably sometime soon. But I wanted to highlight at least the journalists here that are being murdered. So we're going to get into that. But I wanted to just start everyone with this. So the smell of death returns to Gaza, writes Jana Ahmad Abu Sita, writing over at the EI, the Indie Media Award honoree. So they write, I don't know what time it is. I don't remember what day it is. I don't know what's happening. All I know is that I am now awake and the occupation's missiles are shaking the ground. I turn on my phone and look into the glow of the small screen, the 18th of March, 2025 at 2 a.m. 5 minutes before I was in a deep sleep, hours before my family and I had gathered for a meal at our home in Khan Yunis, Despite the sadness in Gaza, we have tried to make Ramadan nights beautiful. My mother was making tea on the stove and had gathered cookies for the family. Then we went to bed, dispersing around the house, each of us taking a corner to sleep in or to read until we fell asleep. But now I'm awake, and I consider that perhaps the entire population of the Strip is also waking up at this very moment because the explosions are so loud. We are in a terrifying new reality. Minutes pass and the sounds of bombardment get louder. Explosions continue, and I try to decipher how near they are. My little sister is also awake and crying, and I try to calm her down, but my own anxiety is unbearable. I don't know how to describe how I feel now. I am writing from a building near the Nasser Medical Complex. I am watching the ambulances and cars rush by in desperate attempts to save one soul from death. But I also sense that each ambulance carries one soul that is departing this earth. It has been a month since I smelled death in Gaza, but now it comes back to me with ease. I try to write about hope and strength, but the only voice I can channel now is the one of horror inside me. I'm writing to you now, not knowing if we will survive this time, or if we will see the sunrise tomorrow. We didn't have our own pre-dawn meal, and my mother has now warned us to stay away from the balcony, lest shrapnel hit us. Time passes, and morning comes. My brother went to the hospital to see if he knows anyone who has been wounded. There at the morgue, he said that many journalists had arrived, along with people looking for their loved ones. A man guarding the morgue shouted, "Stay away, and please don't take pictures." He asked that the crowds respect the women's privacy. Today we had planned a shopping day for my little sister to pick out new clothes for Eid, but now we will stay inside. We are good people with deep feelings. We dream of journeys other than displacement and living in something other than tents. We grieve when we bury our children, and we try to understand how death has become ordinary. How can a few people control the fate of another people? So that just being a introduction to the horrors that have re-arrived in Gaza, but this is from Julia Connolly. That person mentions journalists coming to the morgue. We're going to talk about them specifically. So I wanted to bring the last story of one of those said journalists before Israel murdered him. Deliberately, I might add. So colleagues of Al Jazeera journalist Hossam Shabat on Monday posted the Palestinian reporter's own words on social media after he was killed in what was reportedly a target attack by U.S.-backed Israeli forces in northern Gaza. If you're reading this, it means I have been killed, most likely targeted by the IOF, said Shabat in the statement before his death. When this all began, I was only 21 years old, a college student with dreams like anyone else. For the past 18 months, I have dedicated every moment of my life to my people. I documented the horrors in northern Gaza minute by minute, determined to show the world the truth they tried to bury. I was a third-year college student before this genocide started, but I'll never be able to finish my studies because Israeli occupation forces bombed my university and every other university in Gaza. Thanks to the brave college students who are protesting and advocating for us, we see you and hear you. Don't stop. So, Shabat had been reporting for Al Jazeera Mubashir on the Israeli assault on Gaza that began in October in retaliation for a Hamas-led attack, documenting the destruction of northern Gaza and the impact of Israel's blockade and attacks on the people there. Witnesses told Al Jazeera that Shabat's car had been targeted in Bet Lahia, and his colleague at the network, Tariq Abzu Azum, reported the Israeli forces carried out the strike without any prior warning. Also on Monday, an Israeli airstrike killed Palestinian Today journalist Muhammad Mansour, as well as his wife and son. They were killed in their home in Khan Yunis, Abu Azum reported. So Hossam Shabat posted about his colleague who was killed by Israeli forces in Gaza earlier today. 2 hours later, Hossam was assassinated. Israel is targeting journalists, killing them one by one until there's no one left to report on the genocide, which is a war crime. War crime. Fee. Israel kills journalists and babies on a regular basis with money and weapons from our government in D.C., and we still have stupid U.S. Americans arguing that Iran shouldn't have nukes, but don't mind Israel having them as they commit multiple genocides. We are a doomed bunch. So, again, bringing up this Muhammad Mansour. Yeah. But video shows a deeply emotional farewell from the father of journalist Muhammad Mansour, who was killed by Israel. In the heart-wrenching video, the father is seen crying as he says, "I wish I were the journalist instead of you." According to reports, the total number of journalists killed by Israel in Gaza has risen to over 200. And you can see that caption. He asked his son to get up and speak. So you can go watch that video if you so wish at MintPress News on Twitter. So Abubakar Abed, me and Indy have brought his speeches frequently. He writes, "I have lost words. I know Hassam and how polite and amazing he is. I am deeply heartbroken and infuriated. I don't know what to say. I am seeing my colleagues hunted before my eyes." So I would advise him to please stay as safe as possible. Fee, rest in power now and every single day. Fuck Israel. Couldn't agree more, Fee. And you see here Hassam putting on the press jacket and helmet once again, thinking that they might have peace for a minute, but apparently Israel wishes that to not be a thing. So, but Misty, Israel has murdered this man, yet another journalist, and as always, as Misty has done frequently, almost every day, writes, "Fuck Israel." So, Eva Karine Bartlett, the Israelis have killed courageous Palestinian journalist Hassam Shabbat. I'm stunned, not because of the barbarism of the Israelis, but because Hassam reported so long, so courageously, with so many close calls, I somehow thought he had passed the worst and would survive. Devastating. May his soul rest in peace, and his friends and family find solace, and the loved ones of all over 200 Palestinian journalists in Gaza murdered by Israeli soldiers in the past year and a half alone. So, the government media office in the Gaza Strip announced on Monday that the number of Palestinian journalist martyrs has risen to 208 since the start of the war. So, Kamal Sharaf's amazing artistic work here. So, if you notice, made in US. So, pretty accurate. Again, I feel like it's important to highlight the artists as well. Here's Marim Ali with her work. You only target journalists when your enemy is the truth. So, couldn't agree more. And again, Marim Ali with her work. Just impeccable stuff. And amazing, technique there. Good on you. But Robert Inlakesh, being a journalist in Gaza, one of the most heroic professions, where you are hunted for telling the truth. Palestinian journalists in Gaza are braver than any racist soldier, hiding like a coward and pressing buttons to commit mass murder, killed by liars for telling the truth. So, Hassan was 19. Hassam was 23. Ishmael was 27. Israel killed all of them. Fee, all three of these young men are now dead because Israeli kills journalists while they blame terrorism. Israel are the terrorists who need to go. So, this is again Hassam Shabbat saying he's still carrying the torch after the passing of his two colleagues. So, yeah. But to continue this article, Mansour and Shabbat's death bring the number of journalists who have been killed in Gaza to 208. The commitment to protect journalists called for an independent investigation into whether Shabbat and Mansour were deliberately targeted. The deliberate and targeted killing of a journalist of a civilian is a war crime, Jody Ginsburg, the group's chief executive, told Al Jazeera. Drop site news, where Shabbat was a contributing reporter on the bombardment of Gaza, said it holds Israel and the U.S. responsible for killing Hassam. So, and I'm not the biggest fan of drop site, but you know how people talk about unity and that we should be for those we may disagree with? This is what that means. Not any of that other stuff. This is the murdering of journalists. This is what you stand for.
Right.
So, Drop Site News, where Shabbat was a contributing reporter on the bombardment, said it holds Israel and the U.S. responsible for killing Hassam. In October, the IDF forces included Shabbat and 5 other Palestinian reporters on a hit list. Hassam regularly received death threats by call and text, said the outlet. What we have witnessed for nearly a year and a half is the Israeli military engaging in a systemic campaign to kill Palestinian journalists as well as the member of their families. So here's that list, right? We have, let's see if I can read these. Come on. Talal Muhammad Abdul, Alsa Abdul Aziz, Jamal Mahoud al-Shartel, and the 3 that, you know, we've already mentioned. So, Ashraf Sami and Shor Saraj. So, please be safe if you're anyone involved. So, Israel just murdered Hassam Shabbat. He is the 251st journalist murdered by Israel during its mass murder spree, and second journalist Israel killed today. So again, conflicting numbers. So I wanted to bring at least the higher ones so far. But this video I thought was important to bring. So Hassam Shabbat, who has been targeted by the UF as someone they're going after, says he doesn't care. So he was asked about being targeted, and this was his response.
استنى شوي شو شعورك وانت هيك منزلين عنك اليهود قدم شوي ولا يثنينا شيء.
It hasn't affected me at all. May God bless you, and I'm steadfast. And right now we're headed to show the world. God be with you, my loves. So he was, you know, incredibly brave. So Ison responds, I can't stop crying. So Robert Durden, we will never forget and we will never forgive those responsible for this evil. He was on with Indy recently. Go check that out. But yeah, agreed, Robert. Seed Mohammed Morandi says, Zionists murdered 2 journalists in Gaza today. Do you think mainstream Western journalists will express outrage? Of course not. The cowards effectively support the Gaza Holocaust. Gordon Dimmack, don't expect BBC News or Sky News or GB News to talk about this murder of another heroic journalist. They are owned, occupied, and paid by the very Zionist terrorists who did it. Shabbat had filed a story for Drop Site just hours before he was killed about Israel's resumption of its scorched earth bombing of Gaza last week that killed over 400 people, including nearly 200 children in a matter of hours. As Drop Site published Shabbat's vital dispatch, journalist and editor Sharif Abdel Kadu wrote that he was one of a handful of reporters who remained in northern Gaza through Israel's genocidal war. His ability to cover one of the most brutal military campaigns in recent history was almost beyond comprehension, wrote Kadu. He bore witness to untold death and suffering on an almost daily basis for 17 months. He was displaced over 20 times. He was often hungry. He buried many of his journalist colleagues. In November, he was wounded in an Israeli airstrike. I still can't believe I am referring to him in the past tense. Israel obliterates the present. So, this is footage from MintPress, right? They captured the profound impact that Hassam Shabbat had on the children of Palestine, inspiring them to aspire to careers of journalism. In this video, a child expresses her desire to become one, questioning, how am I supposed to be a journalist if Hassam Shabbat was martyred? Her statement underscores the fear and confusion felt by young aspirants due to the dangers faced by journalists in conflicted zones. So let me pull that up. What do you mean why? When the occupation into the north, we were about to mourn you, man. I swear. Was it that bad? What do you believe in? that there is no God but Allah. I swear to God that I came down to see you. So you missed us. I swear I missed you all. You're a real champ. What do you want to be when I grow up? A journalist. How am I supposed to be a journalist now if Hassam is martyred? But how am I supposed to become a journalist? And what will make you into a journalist? Do you want to become a journalist? God willing, you'll become one. So shout out for MintPress for grabbing that footage. But I will continue. Abu Bakr Abed, a month later, they hunted him, left his family with deep anguish that will stay with them forever. I can't imagine. I can't even fathom this pain. He's responding to Shabbat, who had finally reunited with his mother after 492 days. He's finally hugging his mom. So, and I wanted to bring some more statements about that. Hassam writes, my mother told me before she fled to the south of the Strip, continue covering in the north, and she didn't seem worried about me. She thought that since I was a journalist, I was protected. She said the sentence that I remember every day for the past 10 months. You're a journalist, son. They won't bomb you. Don't worry. Today, Mom, we said goodbye to our colleague, friend, and beloved Ismail Al-Ghul. Mom, your words are true, but only outside of Gaza. Here with the criminal occupation army, journalists are targeted before civilians. In all countries, my mother's words are true. Journalists are protected all over the world, except in Gaza, where they are targeted. So, Martyr of Gaza writes, he was pleading with you for help. Here he is writing, your stand in front of the Zionist terrorist occupation embassies and in the streets of your countries is more rightful and necessary than supporting Gaza with just prayers in the prayer niche. So, Abu Bakr Abed writes again, Hassam has been pleading for you to help for over 17 months. No one ever stepped up. No one. This is what the world has allowed. You will see more of this. This is what you should expect. We are talking to deaf ears and blind eyes. We are bearing the brunt of this tragedy. One of Hassam Shabbat's last Instagram stories before he was killed wrote, on behalf of the Emirates, O people of the Emirates, O people of Saudi Arabia, O people of Jordan, O people of Egypt, where are you? This entire world has failed him and failed all Palestinians. He was 23 years old. In his final article, Shabbat wrote about the attacks on numerous families in northern Gaza as Israel resumed its assault, abandoning a ceasefire that took effect in January. Screams filled the air while everyone stood helpless. My tears didn't stop. The scenes were more than any human being could bear. The ambulances were filled with corpses, their bodies and limbs piled on top and intertwined with one another. We could no longer distinguish between children and men, between the injured and the dead. At Al-Andalus Hospital, the scene was even more painful. The hospital was filled with martyrs. Mothers bid silent farewells to their children. Medical staff worked in horrific conditions, trying to treat the injured with only the most basic means available. It was an impossible situation with massive numbers of dead and wounded being brought in at a terrifying rate. Israel's aggression continues, massacre after massacre, leaving only the screams of mothers in its wake and the dreams of children that have turned to ash. There is no justification for this. Everything is being crushed. The lives of innocent people, their dignity, and their hopes for a better future. So this kind of continues, I think, in that article. Again, 2 journalists killed today, more than 207 media personnel in the last 17 months. They were killed by American and UK bombs. Israeli soldiers joined by mercenaries making profits off our burned flesh. So this, again, I think is from his Instagram. On October 17th, Israel bombed Al-Ahi Hospital in Gaza. Everyone was shocked. Governments were outraged and demanded investigations. Israel denied it, Western media believed it, and the bombing continued as Israeli investigated itself. UN and NGO investigations proved that Israel indeed did it. No governments acted, no condemnations, no consequences. So Israel continued bombing, besieging and targeting every single hospital in Gaza. They still denied it as Western governments rushed to excuse it. But Israel feels emboldened now. 18 months of genocide and impunity means that they didn't have to deny bombing hospitals anymore. No one cares. They say the magic H word and war crimes are justified. They killed patients today in the hospital, including children and unarmed men. A message by journalist Hisham Shabat from North Gaza to the world, and he wrote this in a Spaces, or said this in a Spaces, but forgive me if I speak with a tone of pain and anguish, but the suffering and sorrow affect all of us. Those who have been displaced dozens of times are my family and cousins. I see them in the streets. The occupation army attacked them after besieging them in the shelter centers. This scene must stop. This assault and this bombardment, we are saying goodbye to our loved ones, one after another, family after family, in this very place. Abu Bakr Abed, you left him in pain. He has departed to rest. He is now resting from an unjust world that keeps watching over countless war crimes committed every day. I don't believe my eyes. I am appalled and horrified. This is the last tweet he posted. So he wrote, in Gaza, the wounded are killed. So that's his last statements on Twitter. Shabat concluded his final message to readers by saying he continued covering the assault on northern Gaza because I believe in the Palestinian cause. I ask you now, do not stop speaking about Gaza, wrote Shabat. Do not let the world look away. Keep fighting, keep telling our stories until Palestine is free. So, couldn't agree more. I'm going to end with this, but Gabriel, do you have any statements?
I just want to go back to, and I know you're not going to like this in particular, but in terms of this is the stuff that we should form solidarity about, because we're not going to give this person any promo, but I've noticed that this person has not said shit about this from what I can tell. So this person is using his or her position to gain prestige for themselves. Meanwhile, this person, this journalist, quietly was martyred in the name of sharing with the world the reality of what's happening in Gaza from his own eyes, because we are not able to go in there and report on it. No Western journalist is able to go in and report on it, so he felt it was his duty to. And other than the coverage, I'm sure some of our colleagues have reported on it probably Monday,
Who
because
are
this
these
was
people?
news.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, Sean.
Appreciate you.
Again, for the hard but needed truth, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
But the reality is, after probably this week, we're not going to talk about this guy again. And
I'll bring him up.
And it sucks. Well, it sucks
as we bring up Shireen Abu Akleh and we bring up all the previous names, Aaron Bushnell, we've definitely kept them remembered. So,
right. And I feel it's our duty, because
absolutely
because it serves as a reminder for what they've lost, and and this guy's last words were, please don't stop talking about Gaza. So it's our duty to. But, and you're right, this is the thing that we should be in solidarity around. And right now, you know this because I've talked to you behind the scenes about this issue. I just feel like even in our space that claims that we are better than mainstream in a sense of, we talk about the issues that no one else is talking about, but at the end of the day, it's all about personality and ego more often. And it's not about us, and it shouldn't be about me, it shouldn't be about you or Indy or anything. It should be about, and part of the reason why we started INN and especially the show, and by extension, How Do We Miss That, is to tell the stories that otherwise would not be shared, even within independent media. Because the algorithm works in a way that if you talk about certain stories, you'll be favored. If you talk about stories that are unfavorable according to them, you'll be suppressed. So, and I think given that, we made a choice to talk about the stories that will be suppressed because otherwise stories like this will not be shared.
Yeah.
So it's kind of disheartening to me, and it makes me very angry that we're focusing on personalities in the space that, for all intents and purposes, if outside the space, people do not know these people. And hell, I'd rather you not know me, but then again, I'm not in the space for fame. I'm in the space merely to kind of report on the stories, and then, as you know, I'm out because I have shit that I need to do in my normal life. But in the midst of all of that, there are journalists who are doing the work that we can never do. And I will be the first to tell you I am not a journalist. So I cannot do the work that they like. And even within our space, like Fee and Vanessa and Eva, who have done this work for years
Yep.
and are good, do not get that. And I think especially given that they're women as well, I think it's a double whammy. Like, do not get the credit that they deserve in telling the truth and telling it unapologetically. I'm willing to go to these countries and talk to the people. And we've interviewed both Vanessa and Eva on this, and they both said, like, we value what we see and hear and talk to with people on the ground based on just being them. And I notice even in our space, it's more the idea of personalities being with other personalities within the elite versus just the normal people. So think about that before you follow these people and liking them and sharing their stuff. Who are they talking to? Who are they meeting? What stories are they looking to share? These are the things that you should be critically thinking about before you follow them and like their content.
Yep. So I wanted to end on this. This is by Rala Selbach, right? Rala, I took out the music just for copyright purposes on our channel. So, appreciate your work. Otherwise, it's probably better with the music in it, the way you edited it originally. So, but I still think it's very powerful. So we're going to watch that and then close this segment out. So, but as always,
Free Palestine! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free!
But here we go.
The truth is a friend we love and should protect, unless you're afraid of what it has to say. The truth is your only friend when everything else is gone and you are fighting your way home. The truth is not chosen. The truth cannot be colonized. It cannot be captured, blindfolded. It cannot be tortured into submission. For without the truth, what do you have? But darkness and delusion.
I think Mali is going to.
The truth is, I am tired, my friend. I no longer know the taste of sleep.
We do everything. We wear our press jackets. We wear our helmets.
But we will forever speak.
Here, this is where
Freedom isn't a person. It is a truth that will never die.
In loving memory of over 200 journalist martyrs, Israel's genocide in Gaza, the deadliest conflict on record for journalists, may their voices forever be heard. In a free Palestine. Well, this is normally where we would ask you financial support. I'm going to skip that and tell you to go financially support the resistance in any way possible. But we do ask you to like and subscribe. Please share to fight suppression and make sure to leave a comment. It helps the algorithm. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Well, I think I barely made it through without crying. Almost. So, my apologies. I know that's hard to watch. So, but it is necessary.
It just puts everything in perspective, you know, like this is why we're here. And everything else that we see online is just merely a distraction. You know, or I think people intentionally want to be a distraction so that they're not talking about stories like these. And yeah, but I think in that sense it sucks because even within our space, we're not immune to like, you know, the option of following the algorithm and like talking about the trending story and like yeah, I mean, like for example, I don't give a shit about Harry Sisson. Like I don't like
Yeah, I don't
you know,
even
I mean
wanna
we
bring
talked
it up.
about him what 2 years ago. Like
Oh,
I don't
and by
care.
the way, speaking of other douchebags, since the terrorist Betar assholes are watching, fuck the fuck off, you terrorist pieces of shit. Get the fuck out my live stream. Anyway, continue.
What do you mean?
They're on our Twitter. Or were.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
you know, fuck you.
But I don't know. It just sucks that even in our space, we can't get it together. And I think more especially stand up for the people who are actually doing the work.
Agreed.
Because a lot of our friends in space are being smeared right now unnecessarily. And that to me is dog shit.
Right.
Like, and if you're going to take that time to smear people who are actually there and have actually been doing the work for fucking years, and yet you choose to go after them versus other people who haven't done shit like that, then you can fuck off.
Yeah. Agreed.
Because you know what? Like they're risking their lives right now in the same way these journalists are to find the truth and report it in a way that we're even able to know about what's going on right now. I don't know half of these people in the space who are willing or are capable of doing that. But yet those are the people that we choose to follow because they're based. Because they're
based on what?
You know, they're trendy or they're provocative. Like you don't need to be provocative. And like even with this guy, like he got traction on Twitter not because he was being reactionary and all that kind of stuff. He talked about the truth. The truth should stand on its fucking self.
Yep.
Like, if you're going on the basis of the truth, that's all you need. Everything else will stand on its own. But we're more interested in fucking personality versus the reality, especially what's happening in Palestine, and not just in Palestine.
Well,
so
luckily,
and again, I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this for our audience necessarily, because I know you guys are more on it. But I'm just saying this for anybody who is thinking of watching us, especially if we clip this. Probably not this part, but like anyone who's watching this live stream afterward, like, be more mindful of who you follow online, please,
and control your algorithm. Don't let these fucking assholes have access to your eyeballs. It's very simple. You're the only one in power of that. So do the only things by actively engaging, like with discernment. But anyway, let's talk about what's happening in INN this week. So I think this is this week, right?
Yeah, this week into next week.
Yeah. I think you got the rundown, right?
Yeah. So let me pull it up on my screen because my eyes are jacked up, which worries me a little bit because there might be something wrong with my eyes, but hopefully they're fine. So Monday through Thursday at 10 on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Simulcast of AM Wake Up. So Indy may or may not be in chat. Maybe if you're lucky, he might be featured. So so definitely check him out. Independent review on Friday. Also at 10. All these times are at Eastern Daylight Time, by the way. Angel in the afternoon at 7 on Friday night, followed by replay of American Tradition, where Jesse and Indy hosted Steve Boykin from AM Wake Up. So definitely check that out. Saturday, Pro Wrestling Talk with Indy. Oh, not Indy, sorry, with Rachel Angel and Witchy Perfect on the INN8 The Ocho channel. Followed by I guess given the timing, he may not do it, but we'll see. But yeah. But at 8:30, we have a replay of INN 101 with one of our colleagues in the network, Rob Durgan, that Indy did an interview with him last week. So that will replay again on Saturday night.
And he'll probably
Sunday,
replay the American Tradition with Steve Boykin, I imagine. Sometime
well, that'll
soon.
be on Friday, right?
Correct.
That'll be Friday.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm on Saturday.
Oh, whatever.
So, Sunday, take a hit. Sunday, Angel in the afternoon, 7:30. I think Indy's just messaged me.
Yep. It's all probably last Saturday, Sunday. Yep.
Okay.
We are here. We're here.
Yeah.
We're right here on Wednesday.
Okay. So
numbers, Wayne.
So sorry. So actually, this will be a big announcement. So so Saturday, I'm guessing it's at 8:30.
Yeah.
Indy will do a one-on-one with Ava Bartlett. So definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Oh, that's why, because I'm looking at the. Oh yeah, that's why.
There's one from last week that this week, the Friday and Saturday, Friday and Thursday and Friday.
Right.
So
yeah,
he gave us 2 weeks.
Well, I forgot. Yeah. So yeah, Saturday in an INN 101 with Ava Bartlett.
Yep.
That's it.
Go watch
Sunday. Right. Sunday Pro Wrestling Talk on the Ocho at 8. Followed by How Do We Miss That with you and Indy at 10 and Boats at midnight. And then we'll be back
Wake
here.
Up Thursday, Monday through Thursday, and then back on Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, So keep an eye out on our Twitters. You can find all our links at indienewsnetwork for any schedules and whatnot. You know, we might be flipping some shows from Tuesday to Thursday soon, so keep a lookout for that. But otherwise, we'll check in with chat for a bit before we head out of here. Let me scroll up. So, I know someone said they shared this stream tonight. KYE sent it to a friend of mine. Good for you. Be more like him. Please share the stream. Who also said you guys have integrity, and that's an honorable thing. Appreciate it.
Doesn't matter. You guys are sweethearts and real humans. We tried.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sean the Accord Lord says it's the reason I love. Yep. A moral compass.
A moral compass.
A sense of honor.
Well, no, it's not. Well, you know what that is? It's more of the idea of like, we care for people and we want this world to be better. And the only way this world is going to get better is through you. Like, and I think especially for me, with the advocacy that I do, I don't give a shit about all these politicians and all of them. I care about you all because you guys are the ones that are going to be doing. You guys are the ones that have to do the work in order for the change to happen. It's not going to come from the people in power.
Dr. Seuss quote, I think, in the very same line. Well, quote. He wrote it in a book from the Lorax, I do believe. But Indy said Israel commits so many war crimes you can't even count them all. Destroying hospitals is also a war crime, says Indy. Again, appreciate the $5 from Sean, who says thank you for the hard but needed truth. So Indy yelling at Betar, calling them domestic terrorists because they are, and they are also disgusting fascist pieces of garbage. So
Vicky Adams, thank you for putting it in perspective. Thank you for me. Thank you. I try. Desert Mantis, tomorrow morning I'll be crying again as I listen to Nora's report from Palestine.
Yeah.
Lots of thank yous. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Global Solidarity put in the chat PalestineCampaign.org. Feel free to go check that out and support them. So Indy saying Julia is a Indie Media Award honoree. So Sean saying, damn it, this will be us soon. And it already is Syria and Lebanon and possibly Iraq and Iran in the future. So, yeah, not great. But yeah, I think that's it. So,
yeah.
But, Sula Moon says, you guys are the real deal. Much love and respect to you. So, appreciate it. We try hard around here. But, as always, I mean, it's still... So, we do the best we can around here. But, yeah, I think that's it. So
yeah, and thank you guys. Like, you know, you're the reason why we keep doing this show when it's almost sucks to do it every week, considering the
self-flagellation for the most part
every week. But you guys appreciate it, and that's what keeps us going. So we definitely do appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, fam, so much. And as always, remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.